Okay, so now we have Jim Davidson from Helam Mines, who's going to be talking to us about the resurrection of the Helam Fissure diamond mine in Swartruggens. Jim Davidson Jim's been in diamonds for just about forever, long as I can remember. He's had various experiences within the diamond sector, but most recently he has been the technical director of Petra Diamonds. And then since he retired from that, he's gone back to Helam Mine and is showing us how you can successfully rehabilitate and modernize a Fissure mine. Jim, I look forward to hearing more about Helam.
Right. Thank you, Tanya. Fortunately, the delegates can't see me. I'd like to say good day to all the delegates. And like I said, fortunately, you can't see me, so I can perform on the other side here. And the Helam Diamond Mine, guys, has been going in operation for more than 80 years. It's in the northwest province of South Africa. And I arrived on this mine with my geological ticket hot in my hand, courtesy of a company called Assam Minerals, which was Baxter Bound and Jenner Clark. And that was in 1970. So I've actually had a 52-year relationship with this place. So I think I know it quite well by now. So I can talk a little bit about it. And I would like to thank the Overberg Geoscience Group for inviting me to give this presentation. I'm initially going to talk a little bit about kimberlite fissures, and then I will revert to what we are actually trying to do at Helam, and to give you guys some kind of an understanding of what happens with fissure mines. So the fissure mines have only been successfully mined in South Africa. That we all know that. Nowhere else in the world. De Beers tried to mine an incline sheet in Canada, but that didn't survive. So I can say they've only been successfully mined here in South Africa. They've always been low tonnage operations. They have always been historically labor intensive, and I'll reflect a bit on that later on. They historically produced about 2% of the diamonds in South Africa. Currently, they produce none other than what we are doing at the moment. We're up to about 1,000 carats a month, and hoping to get to more. They historically employed about 15% of the South African kimberlite workforce, and today there's virtually none other than the few that we have now started working with again. The location of these mines, I'm just going to run through them. Helam is the oldest. It has been operating since the 30s, and it has never closed down. That is quite a feat, and it currently runs at about 750 meters. The others, Bellsbank and the Bobbejaan fissure down there on the Kaap Plateau, they have been operating since the mid-50s or the early 50s. And Star has also been operating since the early 50s. But Star's only reached a depth of about 400 meters, whereas the Bobbejaan fissure is also similar to Helam, around about 750 meters. Bellsbank managed to make it to 400 meters, and then the Ardo and Duplessis mines, they are sitting around about also in the region of 400 meters. Klipspringer up top there was started up in the 90s and reached a depth of about 200 meters at around about 7 level, and that has been stuck there ever since. There are many other fissure deposits in the country, but none of them have really made the grade. They've done the rounds. There's plenty of them around, and the only ones that have really made it economically are the ones that I've just mentioned. You can see there, that is what a fissure looks like. And these fissures normally stand on a blow, or the blows stand on a dike, your fissure dike. Now, I'm going to reflect on this because this is a very important part of understanding how you mine fissures. We take a closer look at this, and you go to a situation that is your potential dilution, and you have to pay great attention to this in fissure mining. A closer up of this one, and you can see in the middle there, you can see that is the fissure there. This on the side is part of the parallel cleavage that comes out. And if you look a little bit closer on the left-hand side, we'll highlight them now, you can see these parallel fractures. So what happens there? There's your fissure, there's your waste dilution, and if situation, you have that waste, that fissure, you are already in excess of 100% dilution. And this is one of the biggest fights you have in a fissure mine is waste dilution. You take it a little bit further, those that I've earmarked there, you can see them there. And so that looks fine, there's the fissure. But if you leave this and over time, you take that one, you take it up a little bit further, you see that. That then lands you up with a situation where if you've already got 100% dilution here, when you add that in, you're running in the realms of 300-400% dilution. So your mining method and how you take your fissure out is so very important. To give you an understanding of this business, Helam mine was mined as an underhand deposit from its inception till the 1980s. And the green on the screen gives you the recovered grade of the Helam mine when it was mined as an underhand deposit. The recovered grade is 260 carats per 100 ton. That is actually quite crazy. And that recovered grade relates to a bottom cut of 0.5 millimeter, because when Helam started, there weren't no element sixes and other synthetic diamond producers, and the fine diamonds were used for drill bits, and they were quite in demand. That's why they took them out to 0.5 millimeter. And if you then look at the lower part in red, that is shrinkage, and that is where we came along in the 1990s, and we then carried on with mining this deposit, which was supposed to be depleted. And if you look at the eastern side, that is the second lease, you see cones downwards, cones downwards. If you look at the western side, it cones downwards. It's a bit diffuse in the middle here, but the same thing happens. And all the people that knew, oh, well, this is a kimberlite. You know, kimberlite's a carrot shape. They cone downwards and they then pinch out. So everyone thought that the Helam mine was going to pinch out, and that was the end of it. However, I will show you later on the reason for the continuation of this fissure mine. But the purpose of this slide is to show you that if you mine it as an underhand deposit, you get a very high grade. If you mine it as a shrinkage deposit, you get a very much lower grade. And that all reverts to waste dilution. Exactly the same thing happens on the Bobbejaan mine on the Kaap Plateau. When it was mined as an underhand operation, there was a recovery in the region of 40 carats per 100 ton. When it was mined as a shrinkage deposit, it had a grade of 18 carats per 100 ton. So again, this is your mining method. Simply, the mining method dictates how much dilution you allow into your ore. That is a very important thing to remember. To give you some idea of the dilution, I'm sitting in a stope there, and directly above me, you can see the fissure. And on either side, specifically the left-hand side, you can see the parallel cleavage that is developed in the host rock. And if you mine it as an underhand mine, you will take that out, the fissure out, plus a little bit more, If you mine it as a shrinkage mine, you are going to take all that other stuff out. There's one slide of that. I'll give you an example of your parallel fracture. There's another one where you can see this has been enhanced so that we can display the parallel fracture. You can see it on the left-hand side. You see it on the right-hand side. So if you mine it as shrinkage, you will get a lot of waste. Now, sometimes this, how you mine it, a lot of times, is dictated by the host rock that you're in. And I'll say a little bit of that a little bit further on. This gives you an example of where you don't have a well-developed parallel cleavage. And this is in the Star mine, that we're looking at something about 50 centimeters wide. On the Star mine, Star has exactly the same in situ diamond grade as the Bobbejaan mine, somewhere in the region of 75 carats per 100 ton. But the Star mine was an underhand mine, and we had a call on that one at 40 carats per 100 ton. We regularly used to make it 38, 40 carats per 100 ton. And the call on the Bobbejaan mine is the region of 20, and we would be cartwheeling around if we've got 18 carats per 100 ton. So you have two deposits that have the same in situ grade, but vastly different recovered grades entirely because of the diamond mining method. To give you an example, this is underhand, where you have shown support, and you can see there's a massive amount of timber. This in the older days, massive amount of timber that is being used. The two problems with that: the timber used to be relatively cheap, has become very expensive, and an underhand mine needs a lot of that stuff. And you will see, and on the laggings at the top, those laggings are supposed to be touching one another, and cost saving by various operations. They are left to be quite a distance apart. So rocks can fall through there and they can hit you on the head. And so you see, this is the one thing, it costs a lot for timber. And the second thing with the timber is you've got to put that timber into place. And that requires a lot of people, physical labor, doing that all. So this was the older version with timber, and this is a younger version with support in a underhand mine. This was at Klipspringer. You can see how the sidewalls have been very well looked after with grouting, shotcreting, and a modern form of packs that are put in and supported. But anyway, you can see there is a lot of support that is required in an underhand mine. On a shrinkage mine, you have the contrary, where your muck pile that the guy is sitting on, the muck pile supports the sidewall. And all you have to support is the little cavity you're working in. And you can see there's very little support, a few laggings, and so it's a very much easier way of doing things, less expensive, but it carries the penalty of all the sidewall dilution that you see on the right-hand side. If you have a look at this slide, you can see there, you can see the fissure. There's the fissure. There you can see your parallel cleavage, and yeah, further parallel cleavage on the side, and you don't see it on this side, but it's there. So this brings back to this, I'm underlining this. You have an underhand deposit, you mine it, there was your grade, that is historical fact, and you have historical fact of 65 carat per 100 ton for shrinkage when it was mined. So I'm just underlining that. There we have it again for the Bobbejaan mine, underhand, it was 40, shrinkage, it was round about 18. Now I'm going to bring you to something that is merely an academic, it's not part of the mining, but you will see I refer to this sketch here as an upper set in the green and a red set at the bottom. What happens with these fissure mines? is that if you look at the side here, you'll see you've got a lava, andesitic lava, a small shale, then you got a dolerite, and then you got a lower shale. Now, what happens when a fissure intrudes? It looks at this sandwich, and this sandwich here will be composed primarily of a very competent, more competent rock with a little bit of incompetence, and it will look at it as a whole, and you will have a certain cleavage direction here that is dictated by your strain ellipsoid. Then you go into another host rock, shaly quartzite or a grit, that will have a totally different strain ellipsoid to the upper one. This one and that one are totally different. And what happened with Helam is that with the intrusion of the bushveld, which lies to the north of us, the whole pile of sediments was folded slightly, 10 degrees, they dipped 10 degrees to the north. So there is movement somewhere, and that has resulted in thrust fault, in a thrust fault in this shale. Now that thrust fault happens to be on a carbonaceous shale, which will be your most lubricated spot between this lot of rocks on the top and this lot of rocks at the bottom. So what happens with this lot is the bottom set there, the lower set there, intrudes, comes up from the bottom, and it dies into the roof. It cannot get through because it's too far away from the upper set. What happens is it intrudes into the roof, and then somewhere as it gets closer to a common position between the upper and the lower, where you have the two cleavages, they intersect, and the pressure drives this fissure through this position here, and you have here the fissure will roll to the next level, and a little bit further on you'll have a lot of stringers, and then you'll have nothing. And then this intrusion drives itself out and it spreads out the top again. And you can see the same distance, but there is nothing in between. So this is actually why the Helam mine died, because people thought it was finished, but in essence, it was just tapering down to a place where it could get through to, and then it spreads out again. So that's what Helam is and why it died in the 80s, and it has now been resurrected again because there's a lot of fissure. Whenever you get a new horizon, that's all it does. And I can tell you exactly the same thing if you look at the Bellsbank mines. The Bellsbank mine went down to a depth of about 400 meters, whereas the Bobbejaan mine has gone down to a depth of 750 meters. The fissure intrudes through the unconformity between the Campbell Rand dolomites and the Ventersdorp lava. And it's at that level where the Bobbejaan fissure has actually succeeded and is mined below. And the Bellsbank fissure has not gone further. It's still in the dolomites and has never got further than that. In exactly the same region, if you want to go and look at Bellsbank, you'll find the fissure there at the bottom, but you're going to have to do a lot of work to actually resurrect that mine. That was now something about general aspects of fissures. I'm going to start referring to now is things that you have to you encounter when you're actually working and developing a mine. And I'm going to show you, first of all, duty cycles that you have on a fissure mine. And the duty cycles are important because that relates to how much you can get out of your mine. So I'm just going to go to another slide first so you can get an understanding. This is how these fissure mines normally started. They were started by entrepreneurs who were hands-on people and would find these fissures at surface. And they would normally start with a little shaft that looked something like the one on the right here. and it's a little single compartment shaft, and it's a very small. It'll be a 3 by 2 diameter. Some of these single compartment shafts would develop a little bit further, and they would become a little bit larger. And you see people, instead, there's no conveyance for them to travel on, so they travel on top of it, which today is highly illegal. You can't do that anymore. You shouldn't have done it in those days, but you could do it. So this gives you an idea of how these mines start. And then I'm going to go back to this and just walk you through it. So you start with a little shaft, and it has one deck, and you can put one hopper in it, and it moves slowly at 3.5 meters per second. So you can do 340 ton per day. That is okay. That's very nice to start out with. You take that one, that was at 250 meters. You take it now down to 500 meters. The same thing, single compartment, and you going at 3.5 meters per second, your duty cycle has reduced to 170 ton per day. So you, when you were mining quite nicely at 250 meters, surface to 250, you now can only get half the amount of tons out. So what happens with these mines is they said, okay, fine, we will then we will turn our shaft into a double compartment shaft. But if you do that, you had to have the guts in the beginning to say, I need to sink a double compartment shaft. It costs you a hell of a lot more money to do a double compartment shaft than to do a single compartment shaft. So now you got a double compartment. You can do 680 tons. When you're down at 500 meters, you can do 340 tons. The better thing to do is to go to skip hoisting, where you put in a 3-ton conveyance and you move at 3.5 meters per second. You can get 2,000 tons per day. And by the time you're at 500 meters, you can only get 1,000 tons per day. So what you do now is you convert that into 6 tons, and your duty cycle goes up, and you can do 2,100 tons per day. At Helam, of course, we're no longer at 500, we're at 750. So this figure that you see down here actually gets halved again. So you have to be very careful about your hoisting system, because all these mines started out as little operations with single drum shaft, single compartment, and very few of them actually had double drum compartments. So this business of the duty cycle is very important, and it's something a geologist never learned at university. And there's the pictures of how you have them. And now I'm going to show you another picture how, when you get smarter, this is now a double compartment. This is one compartment, that's the other compartment. So you have one compartment running up and down here and the other one running up and down there. You have a double compartment and you have a double deck. You put one hopper in there and one hopper in there. And so this is also assisted. You can't really see it clearly in this picture, but if you can see properly, you'll see a handle over there. That is a little handle that operates a rail contraption down here at the bottom. Because when this skip or cage arrives at surface, the bellman gives a ring when the cage is at the surface, and that puts him, he can then pull his hoppers out. But what happens is down at the bottom, because of difference in coiling and whatever, this cage is not always at exactly the same point. So you become very ingenious and you make this hoppers, this assisting system here, and you move those rails. And while the guy is taking the hopper out at surface, you can also take the hopper out at the bottom. That just helps you increase your duty cycle. So you've got to be very ingenious in how you do all these things. So with Helam, fortunately, we had quite an aggressive guy in the beginning, and he made a fairly large shaft on John Winder. And this is a double drum winder. It is a 3-meter diameter, And this winder is good for where we're currently running at 700 meters, but this winder can go down to 1,500 meters with impunity. So now it is set up, and we are moving the whole of the Helam operation to skip operation. We're no longer hoisting with cars. One of the things you have to watch out for as you're developing a mine, you don't think about it in the early years, but your ventilation has to go down the shaft. And by the time you're down at 700 meters, that's quite a long way to go. While you are up at the top here, this ventilation would find its way out to the surface. Helam no longer has any open excavations, but we have airways. There's one second lease, one at Betty Shaft, one at Dupree Shaft, where this ventilation goes all the way to the bottom, then it gets out, and you have some pressurization down here, and you have some extraction fans up at the top. Those extraction fans always cost you money to run, costing you 100, 150 kilowatt, and you've got to run those things 24 hours a day. And of course, it's wonderful with Eskom nowadays, where Eskom goes out every couple of hours. Today, we're on 3 cycles of load shedding. You can just imagine when this stops, your air ventilation, because these fans up top here stop, your ventilation reduces. It doesn't stop, but it just reduces. You start fogging up in the mine. So these are all kinds of problems you have to do. You have to have your gensets going. You have to have everything going. So this is just a schematic on the ventilation. Helam is all under control, and the situation works quite well with the ventilation. And the ventilation is one of the things. Water is another. At Star, we're looking at a situation where Star used to do 500 cubic meters a day, and that would cost you about 2,300 Rand in electricity, just for the electricity cost. At Helam, we run about 700 cubes a day. That's 3,200. 700 cubes, just for the people who don't think this way, is 700,000 liters that you have to pump out of your mine every day. When Eskom stops, we have a 20-minute changeover period. We put 15,000 liters into the bottom of the hole that you have to get out of the hole once your electricity comes back again. So having 3 load sheddings in a day is quite a bit of a problem for us, and they don't know what they're doing to the country. The killer here, the Bobbejaan mine on the Kaap Plateau, that used to do 3,500 cubic meters a day. That's 3.5 million liters of water a day that has to be pumped out every day, 24 hours a day. That costs you 16,000 Rand a day just for the electricity. And you work that out, it's close to 500,000 Rand a month just for your electrical cost. The physical pumping of that, you have to be careful what you decide. Are you going to pump it out with centrifugal or stage pumps, or are you going to pump it out with positive displacement pumps? And cutting a long story short, if you do a centrifugal pump, you probably need a 300-400 kilowatt motor to get it going. The charge with Eskom to start up that motor, you're probably going to need 1.2 kilowatt, and your maximum demand just goes through the roof. So the answer is to go through a stage pump, a positive displacement pump. One of these, with its switchgear and its electrical installation, 1.5 million Rand. We got 3 of them running permanently. We only need 1 to run. So you've got to be careful. You've got to have your water right. You've got to have your ventilation right. You've got to have your duty cycle right. You've got to get all those things in place, and that we've managed to do at Helam. Further, we're going into our plant. We're working towards aging milling. And AG basically stands for an autonomous grind. It removes a waste picker belt. You replace that with a reef picker belt. The waste picker belt, you used to have 16 people on the waste picker belt. With the reef picker belt doing AG milling, we only need 3 people. It reduces the comminution to a mill only. We've taken away the primary crusher, the tertiary crusher. The AG mill does the whole lot. All crushers have been removed. Intelligent cuts lead to an open circuit DMS. Now that sounds like a simple statement, but if you don't have these intelligent cuts, i.e., how small do you want to take your product to before you discard it? If you look at a thing like this, you can either go 6 millimeter, 7 millimeter, or 4 millimeter. If you want to take it down to 4 millimeter, you keep a lot of stuff in circulation for a long time. And at the end of the day, in a 4 millimeter piece of kimberlite, you don't get a big diamond. So you are costing yourself a lot of money just to get hold of diamonds that are not worth much. So we are moving to cuts. We're going to be lifting our bottom cut. We're also going to be changing our discard size, and we will have a DMS where traditionally, with the old system, you could get a new feed of 20 ton an hour. You can now do 55 ton an hour. Your total work complement is reduced, and it results in a cost saving. Here is an example of an AG mill. We will be going this way, but we're making a homemade one. This is a schematic of the plant flow diagram at Helam, where we used to have material from John Shaft was transported to the plant. The material from the Edward Shaft, 1.2 kilometers away, was transported to the plant. It was crushed and reduced here. Then it went into the DMS, and then it went into a little coffin container here that was pulled back to the Edward plant, 1.2 kilometers away. And we've reduced all that. It'll come out of the shaft into conveyors, into a bin, and into the mill. From here, we'll have the plus 50 will go onto the picker belt. The value stream is then the minus 16 that goes straight through to the DMS, and from there it goes straight into a final recovery. So simplifying the whole thing just to reduce costs. The revised mining method, this is now relates to what I was telling you people earlier about the mining method. If you recall, the underhand, the old historical, you've got a 260 carat per 100 ton. Shrinkage, we got 65 carat per 100 ton. So on-level retreat decreases the workforce and removes all workers from stopes, but above all else, it's going to move our grade up to 85 carat per 100 ton. The shrinkage method has this problem of what you mine today, you get out 6 months later, whereas the on-level retreat is what you're going to mine today, you're going to get out tomorrow. So this is where we're going to. This gives you a schematic of how you start it up. And there's your shaft, there's your crosscuts, there's your drive. You will make a fissure drive there, and this will be your entry point. And you will make a break hole in your stope in this location here. And that will be the greatest difficulty, is to get that break hole, the break face. Once that is done, you retreat this way. You take all your ore out in this direction here. Same with that one, you do it on that side, and this one you do it on this side. So that's how you start it up, and then your final situation, you can have up to 3 levels. where you are pulling this material out and you're retreating in that direction. You're retreating in that direction. And this is the same as a front cave, just that it's in a narrow vein as opposed to being in large kimberlite. So the guiding principles here is you have reduced waste dilution. What you mine today is processed tomorrow. This is like underhand. The big sin with shrinkage mining, it allows for massive waste dilution. There's an internal supply of waste in the draw points. And this is ideal for miners because what happens in a mine, and for those who have been exposed to mine, if the CEO shouts at the general manager, he's not getting enough carrots, the general manager shouts at the manager shouts at the mine captain shouts at the shift boss, and eventually it's the old Malaysia who's got to go and fetch more tons. So what does he do? He goes to these draw points which have already been overdrawn. He doesn't go, you can't make more new tons on demand. You've got to develop or die in mining. You just got to do that all the time. So with shrinkage, you have this eternal supply of material in the draw points, which you can draw every day. Whereas in underhand, what you mine and today is taken out tomorrow and it's gone. And this will be the same with the on-level retreat. So on-level retreat also decreases the workforce, removes all workers from the stopes, and it'll remove the dust pollution as it'll allow us to do wet drilling. I bring you back to this slide again, which I'm sure you guys must be quite sick of seeing. Remember that with underhand, you had 260. With shrinkage, you sit with 65 carat per 100 ton. Just you have to look at that all the time. To give you an example on Helam again, this was a due diligence done by Snowden in 2005. And that was based on the shrinkage mining that we would it was done in 2005. This is on the shrinkage mining that we were doing. And you will see here that the kimberlite feed to the plant averaged around about 23 carat of Fissure or kimberlite into the plant. And if you do a back calculation on that, that gives you an average in situ grade of 280, 290 carats per 100 ton. Now, fortunately, I've got access to old records of the underhand mining that I scratched out here. And what I told you earlier was that the in situ Fissure here has a grade of over 500 carat per 100 ton. That's 5 carat plus per ton. That was at a 0.5 millimeter bottom cut. And we have done back calculation using the cuts that they had in their plants at the time. They used to use with the old Rubin screen, which we now use the DTC screen. And they used to have a cut at Rubin 8, which is equivalent roughly to the DTC 6 screen. And if you use a DTC 6 screen, which is about 1.6 millimeter, you land up with a recoverable grade of 340, 350 carats per 100 ton. And if you want to do some intelligent cuts on that, you will come to a recoverable grade of just over 200 carats per 100 ton. Now, if you take that and you do the waste dilution on that, if you have 100% dilution on that, you can get a grade of 100. And this is the next thing with our on-level retreat. If you take a situation that you've got a 60 centimeter wide fissure, you make a fissure drive of 2 meters in total width, and you have only partial sidewall collapse of the parallel fracture, you will end up with 42% dilution. If you have a situation where you have total failure of that sidewall, i.e. it all comes out all the way up to the next level, you land up with a fissure content of 30%, which is still way above the 23% that was managed with the shrinkage mining for many, many years. And this is accepting that you're going to get all this parallel cleavage coming in, But what you get out, what you take and mine today, you take out tomorrow, and the guys can't go back and load stuff that has been taken away. That is the big benefit of this thing. So with the revised mining method, the salient features on that, in a worst case scenario with 100% failure, we'd have 30% fissure to the plant. The 2005 diligence gave us a 23% fissure content to the plant. The back calculation of the above gave us 296 at 1 millimeter, and we anticipate we could get a 30% fissure content should result in a grade of 85 carat at a 6 DTC. So what we also do, this new method, it reduces the compressed air requirement. Remember, Eskom prices are not going to go down. They're just crazy and they are unreliable. We're going to abandon the hopper hoistings. Well, we have abandoned it. We've modified to skip hoisting. We've improved the duty cycle. And so we have reduced the plant energy and cost. So the adoption of the foregoing results for a 400 ton per day operation results in a reduction of the workforce from 500 to 200, improvement in mining safety, remove dust pollution, removes the ore hoisting restriction, reduction in power use, the Eskom price, and improves the economic viability. And at the end of that, that is what you get. And Helam has traditionally been referred to as an industrial diamond mine. Now, I can explain to you how it got that reputation, but if you have a look at this left-hand side, you can see those aren't such industrial diamonds. They are very nice gems. And if you look at the gem grainers, and if you look at the gem melee, they are beautiful. And we've got beautiful browns, gem browns, and then these are the near gems. So in the package, 60% of your parcel is melee and below, and that accounts for maybe 25 to 30% of the value. The 30% of the parcel lies in the grainers and above, and that accounts for 60% of the parcel. So it's absolutely, these stones are very sought after. When they cut, we know they cut one color better, and we have averaged a value of $140 per carat for the last 6, 7, 8 months. And the world average price for diamonds from kimberlite is well under 100. So I don't see that you can actually call Helam an industrial diamond mine anymore. So I think I've said most of what I want to say. That gives you an example of what you can find, but this was not from Helam, okay? In my various activities, I'm saying thank you. And if there are any questions, I'll try to help.
Thanks very much, Jim. That was a very interesting walk through Helam. It's certainly changed since the early days when I visited it. Do we have any questions from the audience? There's one in the chat, Jim. It's more of a general question. Andrea asks, do you know how many mines are developing their own independent power supply? The mining industry must be negatively affected by load shedding, and it isn't a new issue either. Do you have any comment on that in general?
Okay, on that, I can't tell you how many mines are doing it, but I can guarantee you that most of the mines will be looking at doing it. Specifically in a case like ours, if you, on a bigger mine, let us say Impala or Cullinan or whatever, you enter into an agreement with Eskom. If they go to stage 2, they will say, okay, you have to reduce your power by 20%. You go to stage 3, you reduce it by 30%. Stage 4, you reduce it by 40%. And that allows you to manage your own power supply without having to close down. Now, the smaller diamond mines like Helam, we sit on what is called a rural feeder. We have 2 or 3 little towns plus a whole host of farmers that are on that line. And so Eskom can't take you out. So you might say, okay, I can reduce my power by 20%, but all the other people on the line are not going to reduce their power. So Eskom has got no option. They just take out the whole line. They don't give you the option of reducing your power, which we could do. And so the net result is that you get taken out. Like I said, today, we are being taken out 3 times. And we are definitely looking at the options of getting solar. And if you want to run night shift, you also have to have solar with battery. That automatically doubles the price. But it is a worthwhile thing to do. And I can guarantee you that most people will be doing, most mines will be doing that. And we are in discussions with IPP guys.
And Jim, just for interest, your major costs and just in percentages would be obviously labor and electricity, and what sort of percentages would they be of your total cost?
Okay, my cost structure at the moment is actually biased towards labor because I am in a large part I'm rehabilitating so many things. So my cost is very much biased to labor, and it goes over 50%, 55% at least to labor. The energy cost, when we will be running, we will have dropped it from normally this little Fissure mine or mines like this would run somewhere in the region of 15 to 17% for your energy. But when we've got our things going properly here, we will be looking at being under 10% of energy. So that's your energy should be somewhere in the region of 15%. And your labor, when we have the things rehabilitated, we're going like we want to be going, our labor should drop down to somewhere around about 35%.
That's amazing that your energy costs are so low, given all the things you have to do.
Yeah, well, you have to be clever with how you use it. Stay out of peak time, stay out of all the stuff. With Eskom now, you won't know it if you're a homeowner, but if you operate with an Eskom contract, June, July, August, it's called the winter tariff. Your Eskom price virtually doubles.
And just for sort of general interest, you did show a map right at the front of the other Fissure mines. I mean, sadly, Jim, so Star Mine is, I think, now dead and buried, is it? Is that a fair comment?
No, Star is dead and buried, and the Bobbejaan mine, the infrastructure is totally destroyed as well.
Yeah. And I mean, the implications of that in those, Eastern Free State, rather depressed area, Northern Cape, is really sad. I mean, those little mines should like you doing there at Helam, be productive and employing people.
No, it is, John, and those 2 mines specifically produced exceptional gems. You can see the one I got in the picture that came out of the Bobbejaan mine. That was 126 carat, and we sold it at the time for $5 million.
I was actually going to ask you because I mean it produced the most beautiful diamonds.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and with no disrespect, I mean, in comparison to Bobbejaan, yours looked, nice but ordinary.
Hey.
Yeah. Okay.
Mike, you've unmuted yourself. Do you want to ask a question?
I was just going to comment, Tanya, that our labor costs at Tongo are quite remarkably similar, actually about 50% labor costs and a little over 15%, about 17% energy costs, I think, last time I looked, which is a while ago. So yeah, that seems like a fairly consistent figure, actually.
Mm. Yeah. And again, staying with my sort of questioning, Jim, I mean, how many people do you employ at this stage, shifts included?
Well, as I say, at this stage, I am rehabilitating, we sit at about 170, and we've been producing from reclamation tons. We've been pulling between 200 and 250 ton a day, we've been getting a grade of around about 25 carats 100 ton for that. So it's way beyond below break even, but we are now, we have got all the water out the mine. We're starting to fix up all the problems we've encountered on the bottom level, and we're starting to get new tons. So we should start seeing an uptick in our grade.
Yeah. No, you've done an amazing job, Jim. And I mean, you know, whether it's 100 or 150, and you'll know the number better than me, but if you take a 10-time multiply on that, which is probably, you know, a reasonable multiply, I mean, the impact on, you know, local communities and employment is huge.
Correct, John. You know, the biggest disappointment to me in this whole thing in the South African context has been the lack of funding opportunities. The South African banks don't want to touch you. Even though you got collateral of 20-25 million, they don't want to touch you because the title deed of your properties is in a mine, so you're a mine. And I know that farmers also have difficulty. So if you have collateral, you go to a bank, they don't want to touch you. And also the South African government institutions like the IDC have not been helpful at all. They want a brand name due diligence, which is going to cost you 2-3 million rand. Where do you go and scratch that out and whatever? So the funding has been a big problem. One of the things that Lyndon brought out yesterday, which I found very well, he's 100% bang on with what he says in terms of your tenders, your sales, is that his second tender was on average somewhere in the region between 20 and 30% more than what the original guys were trying to give you. In some cases, it went up to 100%. That is an ever-present problem of you always trying to get more for your parcel, they're always trying to give you less. And that is just something, there's no ways I don't think we're going to be able to overcome that.
Yeah. Yeah, but it goes back to you know, it's like anything today, you've got to know your product. And, you know, you guys really go to great effort to understand your product and, you know, shop around and see where you can squeeze the best prices.
Yeah, you're correct.